In an era long forgotten, an emperor of an ancient kingdom began to search for the gift of immortality. Driven by this desire, he commanded a fleet of ships to sail across the stars in pursuit of eternal life. This fleet was called the Xianzhou. For centuries they sailed through countless worlds, until at last they encountered the Eon of Abundance, Yao She. Hearing their plea, Yao She bestowed upon them a gift beyond imagination, a mystical tree called the Ambrosial Arbor, whose fruit granted immortality to any who ate from it. It seemed as if the Xianzhou had finally achieved its lifelong dream. But in reality, this blessing was nothing more than a curse. Other beings, driven by envy, began to attack the Xianzhou, coveting their blessings. Resources became scarce, immortality caused unchecked population growth, and many began to suffer from an affliction known as Mara, a dreadful condition that drove those who had outlived their lifespans into madness. It was in the midst of this madness, poverty, war, and death that the Eon of the Hunt was born. Some say Lan was once a soldier of the Xianzhou seeking vengeance, while others simply believed he was an answer to a desperate prayer. Regardless of his origins, the elusive Rainbow Arbiter drew his bow and shattered the Ambrosial Arbor, freeing the people from the shackles of the plague. Under his banner, the Xianzhou returned to the righteous path, forging an alliance in the name of the Hunt. The alliance vowed to crusade across the cosmos, eradicating every trace of Yao She's plague to ensure that the horrors of abundance would never again take root amongst the stars. Over the years, the Xianzhou Alliance landed on countless worlds ravaged by the abundance, and in turn, many long-lived species joined their cause, the most prominent of which were the crafty Foxians and the Vidyadhara. The Vidyadhara, descendants of an immortal dragon, wielded a formidable power known as Cloud Hymn magic. Recognizing the significance of this ancient magic, the Xianzhou forged a contract with the Vidyadhara, offering them sanctuary in exchange for their assistance in sealing away the cursed gifts left behind by Yao She. There were 5 of these cursed artifacts, known as plague marks. Thus, 5 High Elders were chosen amongst the Vidyadhara to seal them away. The first High Elder, Calorum Venti, was entrusted with guarding an eternal moon. The second, Ardens Regia, was charged with overseeing a living flame. The third, Glaciator Marum, was tasked with protecting myriad waters. The fourth, Mons Grandis, was bound to watch over fallow earth. And finally, the 5th High Elder, Imbibita Lunae, was appointed to safeguard the remnants of the immortal tree, otherwise known as the Ambrosial Arbor. For centuries, the High Elders honored the sacred agreement, dutifully safeguarding the plague marks until their final days. Upon reaching the end of their lifespan, they would molt and then be reborn, passing on their duties to the next reincarnation. This cycle of protection continued unbroken for millennia. That is, until the last reincarnation of Imbibita Lunae broke his sacred oath, betraying his duty and forever altering the fate of the Vidyadhara and the Xianzhou.
Of 5 people, 3 must pay a price. You are not one of them, Jin Yuan. You are one of them.
Hold on. I'll be there soon.
What did I tell you? He's definitely sleeping in. We trailblazers can go days without sleep, but when we do hit the hay, we have to make up for it. Anyway, no point wasting our time in the corridor. The conductor wants us to attend a warp navigation meeting. Same old location, apparently, and we can't be late. Let's head over. Oh, by the way, you drew the short straw. It's your turn to wash the coffee cups this week.
After sealing the Stellaron on Belobog and spending some time with the residents of the icy planet, the Astral Express crew began making preparations for their next stop. It was tradition among the Nameless to hold a navigation meeting before deciding on the next destination, and this time around, Himiko had received a special invitation, inviting the crew of the Astral Express to Penna.
Long time no see, Astral Express crew. It's Kafka. I came at a good time. You're all here. Every single one.
No need for the mysterious introduction, Stellaron Hunter.
Himiko, correct? Apologies for interrupting your little get-together, but I'm sure once you've heard my request, you'll forgive me. I'd like you to make a destination alteration.
Seeing this familiar face stirs up complicated feelings within the Trailblazer, but Kafka avoids him, focusing on her own schemes by requesting the Astral Express to take a detour to a nearby Xianzhou ship, namely the Xianzhou Luofu. She claims that a Stellaron burst has occurred on board and that the Luofu has wrongly captured a Stellaron hunter named Blade, accusing their group of causing the incident. Of course, Blade is a notorious criminal wanted by the IPC. However, Kafka insists that the Stellaron hunters are being framed and had absolutely nothing to do with the incident. Exploiting their selfless nature, she further adds that if the Express didn't go to the Luofu, the Stellaron will eventually contaminate the entire ship, leading to the deaths of over half of the inhabitants. After giving them the Luofu's coordinates, she vanishes just as mysteriously as she had appeared, leaving the crew to decide their next move. Welt and Himiko, both wary of the Stellaron hunters, recognized that this could easily be a trap, yet, despite their suspicions, they couldn't ignore the possibility that lives were at risk. Lives that they might be able to save. Putting it to a vote, the crew calls Dan Heng and explains the situation, but at the mention of the Xianzhou Luofu, he seems to become hesitant. Torn between caution and responsibility, the crew then vote on their next destination, with all but Dan Heng in favor of heading to the Luofu.
The train is about to make the jump. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Whoa! So that's a Xianzhou ship? It looks even bigger than Eurilo 6!
For the Xianzhou, these ships are their planets. I've only glimpsed it a few times, but it's as magnificent as I remember.
You okay there? What's with all the lonely nostalgia vibes?
Himiko requests access to the Luofu and is met with an automated response that eerily opens the gates, allowing the crew to enter. Strangely, Dan Heng insists on staying aboard the train with Himiko, leaving March, Mr. Yang and the Trailblazer to embark on this expedition. Welt, excited to finally join the Trailblaze, enthusiastically shares his knowledge of the Xianzhou with his juniors as they make their way down to port. The Xianzhou Alliance once had 9 ships, but after 8,000 years of conflict with the Abundance, only 6 remain. Each ship is managed by a group of organizations responsible for different aspects of society. For example, the Alchemy Commission handles medicine, the Cloud Knights act as a police force, the Divination Commission gathers intelligence, and so on and so forth. Apart from the independent Ten Lords Commission, all of these organizations report to their respective ship's leader. The leaders, known as the 7 Arbiter Generals, each oversee one ship, with the 7th acting as a neutral marshal. The Arbiter General of the Luofu in particular is famed for his strategic brilliance and almost divine foresight. This raises the question then, why would Kafka invite the Nameless to the Luofu when such an organized and experienced force is already in place? Arriving on the Luofu, the trio are greeted by a strangely empty port with not a soul in sight. As they venture further in, they find many injured Cloud Knights, indicating that a battle must have taken place recently. Soon, they come across a horde of strange tree-like creatures attacking a group of Cloud Knights and a Foxian, and they quickly step in to help. The Foxian introduces herself as Teng Yun. A merchant of the Luofu, she possesses a remarkable gift for storytelling, captivating her customers and leaving them eager for more. Grateful to her benefactors, Tingyun hears of their mission to aid the Luofu and offers to guide them to a nearby safe zone known as Central Starskiff Haven. This area was regarded as the bustling business hub of the Luofu, where countless Starskiff boats came and went, transporting medicine seekers, scholars, and merchants alike. However, due to the Stellaron outbreak, everything has been put into lockdown. If the trio wanted to move freely on the Luofu during these sensitive times, they would need the approval of the head of the Skyfaring Commission. Once a hotshot ace pilot, Yukong settled down to become the head of the Skyfaring Commission after a particularly brutal battle. Now she's in charge of transport and diplomacy. Thanking them for aiding Tingyun, Yukong bluntly declines their help, citing that the handling of a Stellaron involves many internal departments and she prefer not to employ outsiders in solving issues that the Luofu is fully capable of handling on its own. Furthermore, it appears that their systems were hacked by a wanted Stellaron hunter, allowing the Astral Express to enter the Luofu without proper authorization. Just as the crew is being detained for questioning, the Arbiter General of the Luofu himself intervenes.
Don't be too harsh, Yukong. If this gets out, the whole galaxy will think the Alliance has forgotten how to treat our guests.
Known as a divine foresight, Jingyuan may appear lazy, but he is far more meticulous than meets the eye. His careful management has brought many years of peace to the Luofu, and his seemingly relaxed demeanor has earned him the nickname of the Dozing General. Knowing the noble reputation of the Astral Express, Jingyuan absolves them of any wrongdoing, recognizing it as a scheme of the Stellaron Hunters, especially since he had already captured Blade. However, he insists that the Cloud Knights are more than capable of handling the Stellaron. Instead, he asks the crew to assist in capturing another intruder who has slipped onto the Luofu, Kafka. Having grown tired of Kafka's schemes and wanting some answers, the Nameless agree to the General's request and leave to capture her. While March, Trailblazer, and Welt begin their search for Kafka, our story shifts back to the Express, where an anxious Dan Heng grows increasingly concerned for his friend's safety. As a precaution, he asks Himiko to review the video communication sent out by Kafka, only to discover something dangerous within the contents of the transmission.
Stop!
Do you know him?
The Xianzhou is in danger. This man, he... If he's on the ship, then Welt, March, and him. Everyone is in grave danger. But...
Is he connected to that past you want to escape?
I can't leave them down there. It's just... I'm afraid my burden has finally caught up with me. And that everyone is about to be drawn in.
Is there anyone who doesn't carry around a past burden? She may not remember it, but even a girl as carefree as March has hers. We tread on a path that is hidden from us. The things we see and the trails we blaze all become our baggage. They weigh us down, but they also give us strength to continue the journey. Try not to dwell on it, Dan Heng. The Express spends 7 standard days at each stop. Its passengers are allowed to do as they deem fit during that time. Pom-Pom and I are more than capable of looking after the Express. If there's something you've got to do, do it now. Better than regretting it further down the line. And you'll come back and travel with us once this is all over, right?
As Dan Heng steps onto port, a chill runs down his spine. This place holds haunting memories for him, as he spent his whole childhood here locked away in darkness as a prisoner, with this very port being the only glimpse he ever had of his homeworld before being exiled from the Luofu. He had spent his entire life running away from this place and the ghosts that followed from it. But now with his friends in danger, he has no choice but to run towards his demons instead. By chance, Dan Heng stumbles upon 2 individuals locked in battle with strange branch-like beasts and quickly steps in to help them fight off the monsters. After successfully defeating them, the individuals both introduce themselves. The first is an enthusiastic girl named Su Sheng, a rookie Cloud Knight recently transferred from the Xianzhou Alliance. Her selfless nature always keeps her constantly busy, always eager to lend a hand to those in need. The second is a foreign traveling merchant, simply going by the name of Luofu. As a Cloud Knight tasked with evacuating civilians during the lockdown, Su Sheng insists on taking both Dan Heng and Luofu to a safe zone located near the coast within the Alchemy Commission. Dan Heng suspects that the safe zone is the most likely place to find his friends, and since the merchant appears to be heading in the same direction, he and Luofu willingly agree to accompany the young Cloud Knight, citing safety in numbers.
Oh, one more thing. I need you to write your names down later. I don't know too many characters. I might make a mistake.
Following Kafka's last known location, Jingyuan guides March, Trailblazer, and Welt to a Starskiff boat production plant where they begin their search for the Stellar Hunter. However, the hunt feels suspiciously easy as Kafka leaves behind very obvious traces, almost as if she wants to be caught, and no sooner than they do find her.
Finally.
Rudimentary. Your every move has been foreseen by the Omniscient. Fushun, Divination Commission. I'll be taking the criminal from here.
As head of the Divination Commission, Fushun is a confident, no-nonsense sage who uses her predictive powers to chart navigational routes and make decisions for the Luofu's future. She eagerly awaits the day when Jingyuan will step down as she herself aspires to his position. However, that day still seems very far off. She escorts a surprisingly cooperative Kafka to the Divination Commission as per the General's orders, asking the Astral Express crew to hold their questions and wait until she finishes with her preparations to interrogate Kafka. And while waiting, the Nameless witness a first-hand experience of someone becoming Mara-struck.
What's going on with him?
What is that?
Everybody stay back! Give him this medicine and make him lie down! I mean, make them lie down!
After rescuing the vivacious young girl, she introduces herself as Bai Lu, a talented Vidyadhara known as the Healer Lady due to her expertise in medicine. For the Xianzhou natives, their bodies may be immortal, but their minds remain human. Over time, the accumulation of memories and experiences overwhelms them, leading to insanity or the condition known as Mara-struck. This condition manifests differently for each person, but Bai Lu comments that the number of people turning into Mara-struck monsters as of late has increased unnaturally since the Luofu went into lockdown, possibly linked to the Stellaron's influence. As the trio spend their time assisting Bai Lu, a new problem emerges elsewhere on the ship. Blade has escaped. Hinting at being partly responsible, General Jingyuan contemplates his next move and decides to confide in his young protege, Yang Cheng. For as long as he could remember, the boy followed Jingyuan like a shadow, helping him in any way he could, and in return, Jingyuan taught him both the art of swordplay and the art of war.
There are three things in the world that I can't seem to rid myself of. The troubles of the Xianzhou, the papers on my desk, and the weeds in my garden.
This Stellaron thing is easy. Blade escaped. Now we gotta go get him. Just say the word, and I'll solve this in a flash.
I can understand your impatience, and I know you want to prove yourself. Now is not the time. If you truly wish to become sword champion, you shouldn't be running around brandishing your sword at people. Especially not a major criminal.
You think I'd lose to Blade?
I'm saying you need to have patience, Yanqing. Governing Xianzhou is different from a sword fight. The only way to build momentum is to work slowly. Besides, we still don't know who's really moving the chess pieces. There is something we must take care of before making our next move. As long as it remains unresolved, we're at a stalemate. That something is the Stellaron. How did it manage to bypass the Skyfaring Commission's inspections and the Divination Commission's predictions? Where is it now?
I say we bring those two Stellaron hunters before Diviner Fu. She'll get an answer out of them in no time.
I've asked our friends from the Express to take care of that for us. Worry not, you'll have your moment when the current stalemate is broken. You are my most trusted aide, and there are some things that I would only assign to you. Speaking of which, Yanqing... That boy. I suppose it is my fault. I should have given him an opportunity already. A sharp sword can't stay sheathed forever. My fear was that this might prove too big a setback. Bigger than his exuberance.
Eager to prove himself and build a reputation, Yanqing sets off alone in pursuit of Blade. Along the way, he stumbles upon a trail of Mara-struck bodies, all marked by sword wounds. Following the path of corpses, he eventually encounters a blind woman wandering through the port. The woman introduces herself as Jing Liu, claiming to have arrived with a merchant ship to reunite with some old friend she hasn't seen with in a long time, one of those friends being Blade. Clearly a suspicious figure that posed a threat, Yanqing moves to detain the woman. However, she diffuses the tension by offering a deal. She would surrender willingly if he could defeat her in a monster hunting competition. Known as one of the best swordsmen in the Luofu, Yanqing accepts Jing Liu's challenge, confident there would be no way he would lose. With Mara-struck monsters swarming about, they battle their way through the horde. But despite his youthful speed and skill, Yanqing struggles to keep pace with the blindfolded Jing Liu, who effortlessly cuts down enemies. On the other hand, Jing Liu seems to enjoy teasing Yanqing while offering him swordsmanship advice. When the last monster falls, their competition comes to an end, with Jing Liu emerging as the clear victor. Unsatisfied with the boy's lack of ruthlessness, Jing Liu suddenly shifts the tone of their encounter, directing an intense wave of pure bloodlust at the boy, wanting to see how he would fare when confronted with a true killing blow. Yanqing mustered every ounce of his skill and determination to survive just one blow from the swordmaster, who had vanished without a trace. Figuring she might be headed towards Blade, Yanqing realizes he's likely out of his depth in pursuing such dangerous figures. Yet, if he wanted to prove himself worthy of the title Swordmaster, he would have to capture the escaped criminal. Mind made up, he resumes tracking Blade, eventually finding himself near the coast of the Alchemy Commission. Returning to the main trio, Fu Xuan finally completes a preparation for Kafka's interrogation and sends a subordinate to escort the Nameless to the Divination Commission. The escort in question is Qing Chue, a knowledgeable librarian of the Divination Commission known for one thing above all else, her remarkable talent for slacking off. On the way, Well to the ever-curious tourist asks how exactly they plan to interrogate Kafka. Qing Chue explains that the device they would use, the Matrix of Prescience, acted like an ancient computer that could scan the past and simulate the future using a complex algorithm in order to find the truth. In simpler terms, it could read minds. And upon arriving at the Divination Commission, Fu Xuan begins the mind reading.
Here? All for that?
Well, not what you were expecting.
The Matrix of Prescience uncovers Kafka's intentions, but the revelation leaves Fu Xuan completely baffled. The Master Diviner leaves to report her findings to Jing Yuan, giving the Trailblazer an opportunity to question Kafka directly. She begins by apologizing for ignoring him on the train, as she knew they would eventually get a chance to talk here, and reveals her true intentions for inviting the Astral Express to the Luofu. Elio, the leader of the Stellon Hunters, has the power to see the future and manipulate destiny. With this ability, he knew from the beginning that a Stellon burst would be triggered on the ship by a group of traitors, and he used this event as an opportunity to make the Astral Express come to the Luofu. Both Kafka and Blade are here to make sure the Nameless become heroes for the Xianzhou, but to what end? Well, as she puts it,
in the future that Elio chose, the power of the hunt is indispensable. And that's why the Astral Express crew had to come to the Luofu and achieve something important for the Xianzhou. You had to establish a connection with the Alliance. And that's why I had to trick you into coming here. I needed you to meet the Luofu's general in person and to help him resolve the Stellaron crisis. I needed the Alliance to owe you a favor. That way, in the future, at the most critical moment, the Xianzhou will offer you their help. There is only one thing I can tell you about the future. In the best and the worst cases, you will eventually have to face Nanook the Destruction. And when that time comes, you will need all the help you can get. It will be a brutal struggle of Ionic proportions. Proportions that neither you, nor I, nor the Astral Express will ever be able to reach. In the vast majority of futures, that's when destiny ends. But if we follow Elio's plan, there may be a glimmer of hope on the horizon. You know, even eons can be killed. Let's go, Blady. 2 more places to visit.
With one of Yaoshe's cursed artifacts now revived, the Luofu plunges into chaos. The Nameless rush to find Fuxuan and the General's transmission, rallying their troops in preparation for battle. They reveal that the ancient tree came back to life when the Stellaron was implanted in its roots. The tree's base is located in an ocean aboard the ship called Scale Gorge Waterscape, right in front of the Alchemy Commission. However, a rebellion has broken out within the Commission. A group called the Disciples of Sanctus Medicus, claiming to be followers of Yaoshe, are blocking access to the tree's entrance, turning innocents into Mara-struck monsters and taking responsibility for the Arbor's revival. With the enemy finally revealing themselves, the Nameless, Fuxuan and the Cloud Knight forces fight their way across the ship. After a series of grueling battles, they eventually reach the heart of the Alchemy Commission, where they prepare to confront the radical leader of the Disciples of Sanctus Medicus. The fight isn't easy, but even after defeating her, something still feels off.
The ambrosial arbor's descent will bring us undying bodies. Vantilia, the disciples of Sanctus Medicus have fulfilled our promise. You, Lord Ravager, must do the same.
What a shame. It would have been nice to observe for a little longer. You received the gift of abundance.
Surely you can withstand the blessing of destruction.
In a shocking twist of events, it's revealed that Tingyun was never who she appeared to be. One of Nanook's most powerful followers, Lord Ravager Fantilia, had been disguising herself as the Foxian all along, secretly aiding the disciples of Sanctus Medicus. Before the Nameless can act, she escapes, blocking their path and heading deeper into Scale Gorge Waterscape to claim the Ambrosial Arbor, planning to turn every person on the ship into Mara-struck. With little time to grieve for Tingyun, the group is forced to pursue Fantilia, only to discover that the roots of the Ambrosial Arbor are sealed underwater, accessible only through a rare Vidyadra power known as Cloudhem magic. Just as they find themselves at an impasse, General Jingyuan arrives, accompanied by an old friend. Turning back time for a bit, we return to Dan Heng and his newfound travel companions as they make their way to the safety of the Alchemy Commission. During a brief break, Su Shang decides to ask about a topic that's been on her mind for some time.
Fine. How's this for a subject? What's in the box?
Oh, this one? It's a casket, more commonly known as a coffin. It's for containing the remains of the deceased.
The deceased? Aren't you a merchant?
Yes, indeed. This is just part of my job. I was asked to deliver this coffin to the Xianzhou. Ah, I'd quite forgotten. For long life species, death is probably a distant concept.
Nope. The Cloud Knights spend a lot of time on the battlefield. Death is a common occurrence. It's just, we don't put bodies in boxes. Coffins. In the Xianzhou, people go to the Hall of Karma in the Ten Lords Commission and consecrate the names and jade abacuses of the dead. It's our way of saying goodbye. The Foxians and the Videodora have their own ceremonies. Foxian soldiers place their dead in star skiffs and then let them drift out into the stars. They call it the Verdantia returning. As for the Videodora, they're more mysterious. They say that when a Videodora is very old or has a fatal injury, they turn into an egg that looks like a pearl. When the shell breaks, they come out looking young again. My mom calls the Videodora long scions. When I was young, she told me stories of how the Videodora could turn into dragons. I don't know if that's true.
Your mother is right. The Videodora are long scions. They are descendants of the Eon of Permanence. That was why some, but not all, could turn into dragons. The power was a rare inheritance, passed down only to those who could successfully complete numerous rites and challenges. For the inheritor, it was hard to say whether it was a blessing or a curse.
I've heard the story of Long the Permanence and their descendants. Many myths and legends praise the Eon for a rich and immortal life. But for some reason, the Eon disappeared among the stars without a trace, almost as if they had never existed, leaving only their descendants. Every life has its limit. Even the Eons are not truly immortal and will eventually reach the end of their lives.
Let me ask you one more question. Do you know the person in the coffin?
Yes.
A friend?
No.
So, a sweetheart?
Miss, whatever gave you that impression? The individual in the coffin is neither friend nor relative. We met only once. By chance, I made someone a promise, and so I have to run this errand. Let's leave it at that, shall we? I think we've all had enough rest.
The group resumes their journey, pressing forward through the Luofu. After navigating through the turmoil caused by the resurrection of the Ambrosial Arbor and assisting where they could, Dan Heng and his companions finally arrive at the Alchemy Commission, now heavily guarded by the Cloud Knights. As soon as they step foot inside the base, Su Shang leaves to report back to his squad. Not spotting any of his friends, Dan Heng asks the locals if they've seen them. Fortunately, the nearby Cloud Knights recall seeing the Nameless battling the disciples of Sanctus Medicus and point Dan Heng in the direction of Scale Gorge Waterscape. Luofu discreetly hints at Dan Heng to slip away, implying he'd do the same before the Cloud Knights started checking their identities. Grateful, Dan Heng quietly slips out of the Alchemy Commission and heads to the docks to catch a boat to Scale Gorge Waterscape. As he makes his way down, fragmented memories of home, longing, and regret begin to surface. Memories that don't belong to him, but to someone else. A sinner whose past had become a burden that followed Dan Heng throughout his whole life, casting shadows on his every step and every decision. A burden he desperately wished to get rid of.
He's here.
Right on time.
That feeling, Kafka. It's welling up within me. That feeling. It's
Well, don't resist. Let the Mara strike you.
You're here. It's time to pay the price! It's time! You think changing form will help you escape?
I've told you and that woman many times. I am Dan Heng. I've nothing to do with your past.
Dan Heng. You think another name and face can blot out the sin of your past? You didn't even experience death. I will force this suffering upon you, Dan Heng. You will know the pain of death.
Not on my watch. You're not murdering anyone today, fugitive. You're coming with me.
Jing Yuan's lapdog. Did the general not teach you to choose your battles wisely?
Hey, move back. Things are about to... Huh? You look so familiar.
Look out!
Quit hiding. Your true self revealed.
Stop! You...
I have news for you, boy. Behind you is none other than the traitor of the Xianzhou. A criminal forever banished. The High Elder of the Vidyadhara. Invited Lunae. You really thought the Stellaron hunters were the only ones to infiltrate the Xianzhou?
In that case, I'll bring both of you to justice.
A fierce battle breaks out between Blade, Dan Heng, and Yang Qing. However, with Dan Heng's Vidyadhara powers fully unleashed, the fight quickly reaches its peak, with Yang Qing being the first to fall. Before things can escalate any further, Kafka intervenes, freezing everyone in place, allowing Jing Yuan to arrive, with these presents bringing the clash to a halt. Putting together all the pieces, the general finally understands the true motive behind the Stellaron hunters' actions. While yes, they wanted the Astral Express to become heroes of the Luofu, their succeeding goal was to bring the reincarnation of the Vidyadhara High Elder to Scale Gorge Waterscape. Only a High Elder can open the path to the Ambrosial Arbor's roots, and Dan Heng's previous reincarnation was the last known to do so. In this regard, Blade turned out to be the best bait, and one of the few people that could force Dan Heng to reveal his true form. Casually thanking them for their assistance, Jing Yuan allows Kafka and Blade to leave, pretending he didn't see anything this time. Despite Yang Qing's protest, the general quickly silences him, warning him not to interfere and ordering him to return home to heal his injuries. Turning to the young Vidyadhara, the general then asks Dan Heng to accompany him on a walk.
Lunarescent depths, a realm of singular beauty. Scale Gorge Waterscape is the same as when I last laid eyes on it. And here we stand so different from one another. The flesh of long-life species may be immortal, but the constant of heaven and earth eludes them.
You know the Vidyadhara hatching rebirth cycle, General. The waters of the ancient sea have cleansed Dan Feng of his past sin. The person that once stood here alongside you is no more. I am Dan Heng. Whether Dan Feng was hero or villain has nothing to do with me. I bore his punishment, accepted my eternal banishment without complaint. But do not let his shadow cloud your estimation of me, General.
Raising old nets only darkens the water, an exercise in unhappiness. Perhaps it is your visage, the horns on your head, or the unmistakable air of the High Elder that makes the separation nigh impossible for me.
I already told you.
You did. But to what effect? If words alone were enough to change the heart, this world would be without quarrel. If you wish to rid me of the illusion of Dongfeng, you must do something for me. Before I can let Dongfeng die and revoke your banishment edict, I need him to do me one final favor. I can guarantee you that when it is done, you will no longer walk in anyone's shadow aboard the Luofu.
I may not be capable of the things that Dongfeng was capable of.
You must do it, or my promise will count for naught. If you wish to blame someone, blame your previous incarnation. Had he not committed that terrible sin, had the power of dragon transmutation been passed on intact, I would have no need to compel you. It is as I said. Here we stand so different from one another. Dongfeng is no more. Now, there is only Dongheng. But I am the general of the Luofu. There are things that I wish I did not have to do, and yet I must. Let us talk of happier tidings. The friends you made on the Express are here. Do you wish to see them?
Finally reunited with his friends, Dongheng reintroduces himself as the reincarnation of the Vidyadhara High Elder, Imbibiter Lunae. Jingyuan explains that Imbibiter Lunae once held the responsibility of safeguarding the roots of the ambrosial arbor. If they wanted to reach Phantilia, they would need Dongheng to remember how to open the path to the cursed tree. Jingyuan then formally requests the help of the Nameless in defeating Phantilia. True to the creed of trailblazing, the group readily agrees to his request, willing to do whatever it takes to save the people and help their friend. Dongheng, though reassured by his friend's presence, remains conflicted. The thought of having to delve into his past self's memories stirs a deep resentment within him. After all, it was the actions of his previous incarnation that led to Dongheng's imprisonment and exile. No one hated Imbibiter Lunae more than Dongheng himself, and now he must willingly remember the very memories of that same person.
How long will you keep running? I have to leave. Leave? You'll find no refuge among the stars. The High Elder's succession is as eternal and unyielding as the ancient sea. That past is yours? No. You are my reincarnation. A mirror image. A past life sin must be repaid in this one. Not you! For those who defy our creed and break the succession, death is the only redemption. Deserves no mercy! You have nowhere to run.
Dongfeng guilty of unpardonable sin. In light of past merit, the sentence shall be commuted to molting rebirth and eternal banishment.
Why did you take this path?
Hand over the transmutation arcanum and the preceptors will spare
Why did
your
you do
life.
this? It's all because of you.
Starting today, you're one of the Express crew.
Don Hung, I'm clocking off for now.
Attention! The Express is about to make the jump.
You're right. You are my past. But you won't follow me into my future!
万军雷霆的巨响，要喊星魂激荡，惊涛骇浪，随风鲜血滚烫，淬炼出照耀锋芒，我一生一心光。
The ancient palace, once home to the Luofu Vidyadhara, now emerges from the water, revealing the passage to the ambrosial arbor. With the path now open, Jingyuan commands the Cloud Knights to remain behind and guard the entrance, placing Fu Xuan in charge. The general, accompanied by the Nameless, then leads the charge into the palace, breaking the seal that hid the arbor, and finally confronting the Lord Ravager. Using her bodiless form, Phantilia had infiltrated the roots of the ancient tree, drawing on its power and creating a physical body for herself, becoming a terrifying titan. An epic battle ensues, with Phantilia driven back by the combined might of the Nameless, Jingyuan, and the reborn Imbibitilene. In a last-ditch effort, she captures Jingyuan, aiming to corrupt him into a loyal soldier.
I wonder if the transformation of the Xianzhou General into a Void Ranger would cast the Luofu back into chaos. Destruction works in fascinating. What are you?
Don Hong! Do it!
Not bad, General of the Hunt. But all I lost was a body stolen on a whim. And you, how much longer can you last? The destruction of the Xianzhou is nigh.
Be gone, pawn of destruction. Tell the Legion that the vengeance of the Hunt will fall upon them.
After Phantilia's defeat, a fragile peace returns to the Luofu, though the losses from the Marastrop battle still weigh heavy on everyone. The Nameless, being the last to see her, must deliver the sad news of Tingyun's fate to Yukong. Though Welt does suggest the slim possibility of the young Foxian surviving, it's unlikely. With sadness in her eyes, Yukong thanks them for their support and asks for time to process the news and prepare for Tingyun's funeral. In the week following Phantilia's defeat, Jingyuan and his protege take time off to recover from their grueling battles, while Fu Xuan assumes the responsibility of managing the aftermath. The Nameless crew also disperse to attend to their own matters. Welt returns to the Express to relax and tell Himiko about their journey. March works with Fu Xuan to recover some of her lost memories, and the Trailblazer forms a ghost hunting squad. Dan Heng, finally coming to terms with his heritage, decides to stop avoiding the consequences of his predecessor's actions. His first step is to meet Bai Lu, the chosen successor of the Vidyadhara. On his way, he's drawn into Vidyadhara politics, where different factions urge him to either leave the Luofu or become their new leader. Each Xianzhou ship's Vidyadhara population is led by a High Elder responsible for their well-being, but if they are unable to lead, a council of senior Vidyadhara take over. These Vidyadhara preceptors specifically want Dan Heng as their leader, as he embodies the power and many of the qualities of the previous leader. Traditionally, the successor of the Luofu High Elder inherits three things: the title, Uninvited Lunae, a weapon called the Orb of Abysm, and the secret of the Transmutation Arcanum. This ancient legacy is so mysterious that even the Vidyadhara people don't fully understand the Arcanum. Some believe it's an object that lets the High Elder relive past lives, while others think it's a ritual that holds the key to solving the Vidyadhara's population crisis. Whatever the case, when Dan Feng committed his infamous crime, he bypassed the Luofu preceptors, naming the newborn Bai Lu as his successor and withholding the secret of the Transmutation Arcanum. In order to maintain the status quo, the preceptors sabotaged the succession ritual, splitting Dan Feng's power between Bai Lu and his next reincarnation, Dan Heng. As a result, both Bai Lu and Dan Heng lived isolated lives, one imprisoned for Dan Feng's crimes, and the other a powerless puppet controlled by the preceptors. Upon meeting and exchanging pleasantries, both Dan Heng and Bai Lu agree they're both uninterested in the High Elder role. However, as inheritors of Uninvited Lunae's legacy, they are responsible for protecting the Ambrosial Arbor, so Dan Heng offers to help Bai Lu repair the ancient tree's broken seal. As they journey through the Dragon Palace, they encounter many mirages and learn more about Dan Feng's true nature. In his prime, Dan Feng and a group of outsiders formed the High Cloud Quintet, achieving legendary feats like rescuing the Xianzhou Alliance and defeating a living planet, making him one of the most renowned Vidyadhara of his time. However, in a fierce battle against the Abundance, one of his close friends heroically sacrificed herself, losing her life. Upset by the endless cycle of death that war brought about and the ever-decreasing populace of his own people, Dan Feng had an idea. What if the Transmutation Arcanum could resurrect someone as Vidyadhara? Not only would it be a chance to bring back his friend, but it could also prevent his people's extinction. In a desperate move, Dan Feng attempted to use the Arcanum to resurrect his friend, but instead, he ended up creating a draconic monster that wreaked havoc in Scale Gorge Waterscape, destroying many Vidyadhara eggs before being slain. Hence, for causing the permanent deaths of countless Vidyadhara and endangering the Xianzhou Luofu, Dan Feng was sentenced to undergo molting rebirth. Learning this truth, Dan Heng once again feels conflicted about who he was in his past life. Finally making their way through the palace, Dan Heng attempts to repair the seal, but finds himself struggling. Bai Lu, inspired by him, joins in, and together they combine their powers and successfully strengthen the Arbor's seal. Reflecting on what they've learned, Dan Heng notes that he inherited Dan Feng's combat skills, while Bai Lu received his healing and restorative abilities. Bai Lu, on the other hand, sees Dan Heng's inner conflict, reassuring him that maybe Dan Feng wasn't as villainous as he believed, but was actually a kind person. As outcasts of the Vidyadhara, they find a comforting friendship in each other and promise to meet whenever Dan Heng returns to the Luofu, before eventually saying goodbye. After some time, Jingyuan, having recovered from his injuries, calls on the Nameless for a meeting. Once gathered, the general expresses his gratitude for their assistance and presents the Astral Express crew with a special gift on behalf of the Luofu, a jade abacus. This relic, when held tightly, acts as a beacon that can send out a signal to the Luofu, ensuring that no matter how far the Express travels across the galaxy, the Cloud Knights will always come to their aid in times of need. Jingyuan also absolves Dan Heng of any past crimes, officially lifting his exile from the Luofu and welcoming him back to the ship with open arms. After bidding the Nameless farewell, the general then makes his way to the shackling prison to meet a certain traveling merchant.
All who enter here are either jailers or prisoners. Which are you?
Neither. I'm merely a lost traveler.
What a spectacle. The Stellaron, the Ambrosial Arbor, the disciples of Sanctus Medicus, the Lord Ravager. A series of threats that almost succeeded in diverting attention away from the crucial question. They who brought the Stellaron onto the Xianzhou, what was their motive? Will you surrender, or do you require encouragement, abomination of Yaoshi?
General, my power does indeed stem from the Abundance. But I'm the same as you. We are both enemies of Yaoshi.
That's right, Jingyuan.
Stay out of our way. The revival of the Arbor is an omen. It's time for the Xianzhou to choose its next path. The Rainbow Arbiter, the Plague's author, the Ruin author. This is a chess game between eons. If you don't stand with the winners, you stand to lose. And this time, we will put the abundance in their grave.
Luofu and Jingliu claim the crime of smuggling a Sauron aboard the ship. However, in a strange twist of events, both of them surrendered to the Cloud Knights without any resistance. Though Jingliu's surrender comes with one condition. She requests a day of freedom before her trial to travel aboard the Luofu and reunite with her old friends one last time. Aware of her potential as a threat, yet unwilling to risk confronting her directly, Jingyuan reluctantly agrees to the request, assigning Yanqing to guard her while he leaves to question the other criminal.
The sea's depths conceal no stone, and dragons' breaths reveal the moon. The scenery of Scale Gorge Waterscape is truly as magnificent as the poems describe. But as a suspect, shouldn't I be bound and interrogated in the shackling prison? Is it really appropriate to bring me to a place like this, General?
Holding you in the shackling prison would be more trouble than it's worth. For security purposes, we will be performing your trial here.
For security purposes? I suppose it's not my security you're talking about.
According to the Skyfaring Commission's investigations, you arrived on the Luofu with a group of merchants, but didn't make a single trade during your stay. Your departure coincided with the day the calamities took place. You took advantage of the chaos to sneak into the shackling prison, but seemingly took no course of action. Now you claim that you are responsible for the Stellaron crisis and wish to surrender yourself. Your behavior truly is puzzling. I can't seem to piece together your motive.
I was asked to deliver a token in my capacity as a traveling merchant. I knew nothing of its significance. I admit I did have my own agenda for entering the shackling prison, but in the end, I found that the Luofu did not possess what I was looking for. It is through fear of punishment that I am choosing to surrender. The galaxy is a vast place, but I am merely a wanderer. It would be silly of me to think that I could outrun the Alliance.
Merely a wanderer? You're too modest, Luofu. Do I need to remind you of your actions at the Eternity Fortress and the Shroud Veil Star Zone? Or must I utter that tongue twister of a name?
Well, they don't call you the Divine Foresight for nothing, General.
You flatter me. Fortunately, I did my research, or this conversation would have been quite dry.
Seeing that you sense something is amiss, are you looking to defend me and clear my name of suspicion?
That is beyond my control. Attempting to undermine the Alliance is a grave crime. According to protocol, you are to be held on the Xianzhou Shuling for a joint trial before the Ten Lords Commission and the 7 Arbiter Generals. However, at present, you have the opportunity to enjoy the beautiful scenery of Scale Gorge Waterscape. It will be the last view of the Luofu you ever lay eyes on.
She told me that the High Cloud Quintet once gathered and feasted here hundreds of years ago. The unparalleled sword techniques of your master, the mesmerizing cloud hymn magic of Imbibitor Lunae Dan Feng, the artful piloting skills of Bai Heng, the divine weapons crafted by the Juming artisan Ying Xing, and the unmatched stratagem of the General. The 5 of you vanquished evil from the world, creating legendary tales in your wake. Unfortunately, nothing lasts forever, and the High Cloud Quintet disbanded as each of you went your separate ways. You removed me from the shackling prison and decided to interrogate me here. But not for security purposes. You wish to discuss things that shouldn't be overheard. You wish to discuss the one person you've avoided mentioning up to now. Your master, Jing Liu.
Heed this oath. As clouds that cover the heavens, will the knights protect the Xianzhou. Draw!
Yes, Master.
As
Clouds that cover the heavens,
will the knights protect the Xianzhou.
Hold firm. A Cloud Knight must never let slip their will, nor let slacken their form.
Yes, Master!
He doesn't recognize us.
So it is with the Mara strike. To become stricken with Mara is to be a long-life species. If I too become stricken in times hereafter, you must not hold back.
Yes, Master.
No sense of time, humanity waiting, a serious case.
You should leave, Jing Yuan. Jing Liu is already.
Farewell, Master. Your gift of instruction.
I will pay this strike.
While Welt, March and the Trailblazer help Yukong prepare for Tingyun's funeral, Dan Heng receives a mysterious letter inviting him to Jingyuan's hall. Cautiously, he goes there and finds Yang Qing guarding a woman who introduces herself as Jing Liu. Her presence stirs some emotions of his past life, though they don't seem to be good ones. Jing Liu reveals that she sent the letter and explains that Dan Feng once made a promise with her a long time ago to gather at Scale Gorge Waterscape to reminisce over drinks. Realizing she must have been one of his former comrades, Dan Heng agrees to accompany Jing Liu, with Yang Qing acting as a guardian to make sure she wouldn't escape. Along the way, they visit various places on the Luofu, where Jing Liu tries to make Dan Heng remember the memories of his old friends. However, he fails, only recalling emotions and not the people that caused them. Eventually, they reach Scale Gorge Waterscape, where Dan Heng is surprised to find not only Luocha and Jingyuan, but also Blade. Jingyuan asked Yangqing and the Cloud Knights to escort Luofu away, leaving the 4 former comrades alone amongst the quiet waves of the ocean.
And so, everyone is present. I never thought the High Cloud Quintet would be able to gather again in the same place after hundreds of years. If I remember correctly, the 5 of us made a promise here 7 centuries ago. We promised that no matter what happened, we would gather here together and share a drink. Soon, I will be shackled and tried. This will be the last you see of me. This is why I sent out the invitations before departing, hoping that everyone would be gathered here for my final farewell. Of 5 people, 3 must pay a price. Now it is time we pay for what we have done. Imbibitor Lunae, the chief culprit, chose to use the transmutation arcanum as a means of resurrection, begetting terrible transformation and great calamity in the process. Dan Heng, you can never escape the shadow of Imbibitor Lunae. He is your origin, and his sins will accompany you in your path forward until you meet your eventual doom. Ying Sing, the accomplice, arrogant and oblivious, used the flesh of the Abundance Emanator to assist Imbibitor Lunae in his evil. In the remainder of your infinite life, you will experience only murder and your own death, all the while pleading for a place to rest. As for Jing Liu, she succumbed to Mara, slaughtered her people, and abandoned her oath. I will face the punishment of the Alliance and suffer an eternal punishment before paying an even worse price. That is the only way to keep the memory of the pain of the past from fading away. High Cloud Quintet, it is time to say goodbye.
Wait. Jingliu, before you leave, you still owe me my due.
I have tried. Besides inflicting more wounds on your body, there is nothing else I can do for you. The immortality that you possess is not something that can be dealt with so easily. I am sure Destiny's Slave already told you that the swords of mortals are incapable of killing someone with the flesh of an emanator.
He did. But you still owe me the attempt.
I told you when I taught you the way of the sword. I am uninterested in drawing my blade against someone who does not long for life.
You will only draw against an opponent. Jingliu, allow me to repay you for your teachings.
We were here once, 700 years ago. Laughing, sparring, and thinking about the future. Their faces still linger before my eyes, like a bygone dream. I thought those joyful days would flow indefinitely before us, like a Xianzhou lifetime. Yet, dreams will eventually fade like clouds from the sky.
familiar feeling. Almost as if we've returned to my first sword lesson. You used the sword Insing crafted, and pierced, sliced, and impaled me time and time again. The swordplay used to slay our enemies of old is still engraved on this despicable shell. All I can do is watch my flesh become severed, healed, and restored. It's as if they're saying, Why did you and Imbibitor Lunae commit such an unforgivable sin? I know that you have no interest in my answer, which is why I asked the question as you looked me straight in the eye. I've asked myself that same question infinite times, but was never able to find the answer. Why? Why is it that only the abominations can return time and time again? Why does someone like her have to be buried, burned to ash, and eventually forgotten? Why? The miraculous thing is that in my brief moment of death, all the pain went away. Like when we drank to drown our sorrows.
And so, the High Cloud Quintet went their separate ways. Jingliu and Luocha to be shackled and interrogated on another ship. Dan Heng returning to the Express. Blade leaving the Luofu. And Jing Yuan left to watch once again as his friends drift apart. As living beings, it's natural to fear death. The cold unknown that follows life. This fear is most likely why the ancient people of the Xianzhou sought immortality in the first place. Yet, while endless life may shield them from the fear of death, it robs them of the very thing that gives life its spark. Without death, love loses its urgency, laughter loses its wonder, and time becomes a heavy, endless silence. In pursuing eternity, they drift across the galaxy hunting an immortal eon, as one by one their loved ones fall to war in the madness of Mara. For the people of the Xianzhou, immortality is neither a blessing nor a curse. Instead, it's a paradox. It grants them time, but robs them of the peace and closure that mortal life provides. It gives them power, yet only for an unending war against the abundance. It brings them knowledge, yet they are still doomed to watch history repeat itself. Ultimately, for the people of the Xianzhou, their immortality is a reminder that even the blessings of eons come with a price. And that is a wrap on part 3 of the Honkai Star Rail's story recap. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and if you've made it this far, might as well give the video a thumbs up. Comment down below, as I love to hear your lovely voice, my audience. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to this humble Crusader. As for the behind the scenes, some of you might have some burning questions. So, what is the director's take on the Xianzhou Luofu? And to that I say, it was a mess. There was way too much going on in this story. There were about 6 or 7 different plot lines that were just condensed into this short period of time, and even those plot lines were lightly connected to the characters. There's like the Trailblazer stuff with Kafka and Nanook, and then Jingliu and Luocha off there killing an Aeon, and then Dan Heng is having episodes on the other side with Vidyadhara stuff, and then there's the High Cloud Quintet stuff on top of that, and then there's a spice of Yanqing having his own character arc. Yeah, there's way too much going on here. There was a lot of plot but not a lot of storytelling. Well, I can forgive it because it was still very early on in the Star Rail story development, but if we see something like this again, I will probably pull out all my hair. But even then, I tried my hardest, and I think I got a plotline that was pretty logically sound. Sure, there's some parts that like randomly characters are there for no reason, but it follows a flow of sorts. There might be discrepancies in the future, but we'll just have to correct with a compilation video. Maybe a Honkai Star Rail movie. So, until then, my dear Trailblazer, may your journey lead you ever starward.